Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for the next session of Fabric Data Days. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter and moderators to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand within 24 hours right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thanks so much for joining.
All right. Thank you, Anna. Okay, so let's dive right into it. We only have an hour and we've got a lot to go through. So I'm Matt Gordon. My day job is practice director for data analytics and AI with a Microsoft focus for Apps Associates. I'm SQL at speed everywhere online. So if you want to connect LinkedIn, Blue Sky, X, all that stuff, I'm SQL at speed everywhere. In my not day job, I get to drive a race car once in a while, which is pretty fun. We're done with that for the year because it's gotten cold. But that's a little bit about me. Chris, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Oh, thanks, Matt. So hi, everyone. I'm Chris Hyde. My pronouns are he, him. Like Matt, he was too modest to say, but I'm also a data platform MVP. And I'm an independent consultant in the analytics space, focusing on small and medium businesses. My contact info isn't up, but I'm Chris Hyde 325. Likewise everywhere. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Helping us today, we want everyone to chat as much as possible and make things really, really tough for Haney and Marcus and Deepthi. Throw all your best questions at them. If there's any that they're stuck on, which I doubt because they're three of the smartest people I know, but any they're stuck on, they'll pass over to me and Matt in the studio. Just chime in where you're from, where you're joining us, what your job role is, how long you've been using Fabric, that kind of thing. Let's get the conversation going.
I like it.
All right. So, we're at the end of the week. We've got one more session later today in about 7 hours from now. So if you want to be a data engineer, join us in that session. I'll be coming back to do some moderation for that. Let's find out what that role is all about. All right. We know that we're in the middle of some contests and challenges. So go ahead and, go through the link there at the bottom. I'm sure you've seen this slide a bunch of times. We know a lot of you are coming back for session after session. So we won't dwell too much on these opening slides. But yeah, thanks for coming back.
Yeah. And you do get a chance to win some swag. And everybody likes swag, right, Chris?
I didn't know that. Oh,
exclusive.
I'm going to the link now.
Oh, well, you can't do that right now.
Okay. Here's something else you can do right now. Get on board with getting discount vouchers to take the Fabric exams, or some of the PL300 is more Power BI focused. The DP900 is more general. But that 100% discount to take those DP600 and DP700 is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's how I got my certs done, was through getting a voucher through a previous series of these. Just know when you go and you request the cert, it's going to take maybe about 2 weeks. They're really busy getting those vouchers to everyone who wants them, so just don't expect it for a couple of days.
It's not instant. Yeah, and one thing I do want to call attention to is I know some of the sessions that I've helped moderate as well. There are a lot of questions that come up in the chat about how do I get my voucher? How do I get my code? Take a picture of this slide. This has all the information you need. We do want the moderators to be super busy. But yeah, this kind of covers, if you're kind of just here to learn about how to grab that code, this is it. And there are study groups as well. I know some local user groups are doing some in-person study groups. So you can hit that link and see if your local user group happens to be one of those or not.
Yeah, one thing I did want to mention on this slide, I think it doesn't say, but you have to request your voucher by the 5th of December.
I believe that's right.
So you've got a couple days to do it. You have to use it by the end of this year, but you have to request the voucher in the first place by the 5th.
Good call out there.
All right. Well, this is pretty much
says it here.
Info.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're just here for that, obviously we hope you hang out the whole time, but scan that code. That's going to give you everything you need there.
All right.
In-person stuff.
Yeah. Are you running any of these Fabric Analyst in a day workshops?
Not this year, but I've run the RTI in a day previously, and that's certainly not impossible that may happen again. But for 2025, no, but plenty of partners are, and it's certainly something we're looking at next year as well. These are really great.
Yeah, if you're just getting started, either with Fabric or specifically with RTI and Fabric, yeah, you can't do better than going to one of these.
Yeah, and it's free, so that it's a lot easier to convince your boss to go somewhere that doesn't cost money. So yeah, these are great, and the content's really good, well vetted. These have been run a number of times, so you're going to get a really nice walkthrough. It's a full day. Your brain will hurt, but it's full of good stuff as well.
Right, and now we've gone from something that doesn't cost any money to something that does cost some money.
Indeed, but there's a discount code.
Yeah, that's true. So FabCon and SQLCon this year are going to be joined together. They're going to be in Atlanta in March. And if you like what Matt and I are presenting today, there is a full day on SQL database and Fabric on the Tuesday the 17th. That's being presented by Anna Hoffman and her team, so the folks that actually built that part of the product. And Matt, I think you might be doing a workshop as well, right?
I'm part of a SQL Server 2025 deep dive workshop that's currently on the Monday. So yeah, where it says 4 SQL workshops there. For better or worse, one of them will be part me. How about you, Chris? I think you've got one as well.
Yeah, well, Christina Ferris and I will be doing one on using, the data warehousing component of Fabric. That's on the Monday as well, so we'll be competing a little bit, but that's all right. There just can't be too many workshops. And then, like any of the other conferences, the sessions aren't even the best part. The best part is networking with other folks. I heard somebody call it the hallway track.
Yep.
And that's really the best incentive to get to these great, co-located events now. So not just FabCon anymore, also, the on-premises, the Azure SQL DB product. We're going to cover both of those all in the same place.
Yeah, well, and just to kind of underscore that, beyond the learning, like there's tons of great content on these tracks. The job I have now, I actually found via FabCon this year. So very thankful for that event, that it was there at a time when I needed it. But I can tell you that in-person networking and meetings and hallway track, really, really important. You don't have to tell your boss that, but it's a great week. And Atlanta in March is typically a pretty decent place to go, especially if you're under some snow at that time of the year.
Yeah. And if you're, joined us today and you've got something that you want to share with the rest of the community, some Fabric knowledge, some SQL knowledge, the call for speakers is still open for, I think, another week.
Correct.
It's going to end sometime during, Ignite next week. So you can follow the link and submit your session and, come join Matt and I there. And
Absolutely.
7,000 of your other, soon to be closest friends.
That's right. Okay. And don't forget the discount code. If you were so moved by that you want to sign up right now, you can use the code FabLive to save $200, which is always nice. So,
all right,
let's get to what the people want to know here, Chris.
Well, I suppose so.
We probably should.
How do databases and Fabric fit together? Well, we're going to talk about where databases meet Fabric. And I know that Fabric's new for a lot of you, so we'll give you just a brief kind of overview of Fabric architecture. And we expect a lot of you already have, T-SQL skills and SQL Server DBA skills. So we're going to talk about how to bring those skills forward with the databases in Fabric. We'll talk about how they integrate with AI to make app development super easy. We'll talk about, just getting started with them, and then more broadly, kind of evolving, your career in the Fabric era. And,
Sounds good.
And let's give a little disclaimer up front. These slides are very marketing heavy.
Yes.
Right. But Matt and I don't work for Microsoft, so we're here to sort of a little bit cut through some of the marketing speak.
Yeah.
Tell you what we really think.
Yep. Yeah. There's some stuff here. Like you said, the deck is pretty marketing heavy, but yeah, we've got real world experience in this stuff, and know what customers are excited about and what they're doing, and vice versa, what they're, let's say, less excited about. So if you're thinking like, oh, this is just going to be marketing, it's not. We are going to have a little fun. We do want to keep it live and interactive. Like we said, keep those moderators busy. They are awesome. So ask a bunch of stuff in there, and like Chris said, if something happens to stump them, Chris and I will do our best to answer that, but they are super smart, so probably that won't happen. All right, databases meet Fabric. Off we go. Okay, so if you followed the Fabric story, you'll note kind of the subtle changes in the way Fabric's been described and how the marketing has shifted from its first announcement. To where you really are looking at like an enterprise data platform. As that marketing shifted, one thing you may have noticed is there arguably wasn't like a true place to put an OLTP workload in Fabric as we knew it when it was born. And bringing databases to Fabric like SQL and like Cosmos basically fill that gap that was there. Of course, all this is running on top of one lake and all that. It does kind of bring the data platform together. But what it does is give us a way to deploy that SQL Server engine that we know and maybe love, hopefully love. It brings that to Fabric as well. So we can have analytical systems running. We can have operational systems running. So if you're kind of looking for that one-stop shop, that's covered here. You feel like I left anything out there, Chris?
No, I think that's yeah.
Okay.
It would have taken me 4 times as long to say the exact same thing.
Fair enough. Okay, so the next question, and we get to, anytime I'm out at a customer talking about Fabric or doing any session about Fabric at all, some variety of, okay, Fabric's got all like a ton of stuff in there. What do I use for what? This slide does a pretty good job kind of walking us through some use cases that might make sense. So like we said, for operational workloads, you've got SQL database in there and Cosmos as well. The tech behind Cosmos is really, really cool. Fair to say it does cost a decent bit of money to make all that cool stuff happen. But if you're looking for like multi-master rights and things like that, and really a nice kind of globally scaled data workload, it's pretty good at that. For your traditional, let's say, analytical workloads, warehouse is going to be a natural landing point there. If you're looking to query a lakehouse, so lakehouses have a SQL endpoint on them, so you can run the queries that way, and you can talk T-SQL to it. Again, like Chris said at the start, because this is a databases and Fabric session, we're kind of making the assumption that a lot of us here have some sort of a SQL Server T-SQL background. But feel free to say in the chat if that's not true, because that would be interesting to learn as well. And if you're not, so these last 2 bullet points talk about mirroring. So Chris, I want to take a second and kind of talk about that, because I think that's a pretty interesting part of Fabric where I'd say the marketing kind of glosses over just how helpful it can be. So layman's terms, basically what mirroring does is it allows you to bring databases that live elsewhere, maybe on-prem, maybe other clouds, maybe elsewhere in Azure. and you can mirror that data into Fabric so it lands in one lake, like it says there. And then we can query it with T-SQL or with notebooks or something like that. One thing, though this is not a session about Fabric data agents, one thing that was announced at FabCon Vienna. So if you're familiar with data agents, basically what they are is a conversational way to explore your data. You can give them kind of strict instructions and a role, and then they will translate your natural language into KQL, T-SQL, what have you. Data agents now run on mirrored databases as well. So any database that you can mirror into Fabric, you can now use agents to talk to. And then agents kind of fit into Copilot Studio and a bunch of other cool things. So I'm excited about the mirroring. I've been excited about it. And now as that starts, we can connect it to more things. Agents are certainly growing in their use and their ability to be plugged into a bunch of other things as well. I didn't want to present this slide without glossing over that. Chris, do you feel like I missed anything there? That was an extremely brief description of what mirroring is. I feel like I might have glossed over some stuff.
Yeah. So just in general, right? I think we've started talking a lot about medallion architecture, right? Bronze, silver, and gold. And the bronze layer is really that's your staging area, what classically was known as your staging area. And that's just usually an exact copy of what was in your business system and your transactional system, right? So that's what we're talking about here. And just something to note, we're talking about, I guess, two things to note. So one thing this always comes up, we talk about SQL database, we talk about Cosmos DB and its NoSQL. And there's always a question, is SQL Server going away? No, categorically not happening. NoSQL doesn't really mean not SQL. It really means not only SQL. Yeah. Right? That's, just want to clear that misconception up. So regular SQL isn't going away just because we have Cosmos. We've just got multiple options for, our transactional system.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to mention too is that this mirroring works both on the database products in Fabric. So you can have SQL DB and Cosmos DB in Fabric, and that mirroring is set up and running like automatically for you. It's super sweet. But that doesn't mean that you can't also have your Azure SQL DB or your Azure Cosmos DB outside of Fabric, but mirroring the data in. So all that time, whatever your transactional system is, we don't want you to spend all your time writing pipelines to move data into your bronze layer.
Right.
We want the data to just magically appear in one lake in the bronze layer for you.
Yeah. And that's really, there's a lot of kind of cool things to talk about with this. That's really the main one is you can develop an architecture where you're right, that bronze layer is just there. And then you can do silver and gold and whatever after that. But taking out kind of the menial parts of what we do and just letting us do the fun stuff is always good. I'm a fan of that. And just to kind of help underscore this, there is a diagram here that's basically showing, here's a source. It uses Snowflake as a mirroring example. There are many others, but I've personally run the Snowflake mirroring in the Fabric, and it's pretty easy. So this just kind of describes how this is working here, where the data is coming from, how it's getting there. That bottom line there is maybe how you're going to present it, whether it's warehouse, data visualization, Spark. So hopefully that's clear. If not, let us know in the chat and we can talk to it a little bit more. Okay, so because we have a lot of database and SQL folks here, Fabric architecture may be new to some people. So Chris, Chris and I'll kind of talk through this. So Chris, I'll take the center and then I'll hand Data Factory off to you. So one thing I do want to call out here is you see databases highlighted and it says public preview. That is an important thing to note. Is when things are in preview, my experience has been generally they're pretty stable, they generally work well, but they're not GA. So as one of my friends likes to say, calling 1-800 Microsoft if there's an issue is not necessarily available to you. So you can kind of approach this session as like databases are here, they've been in preview for a while. So logic kind of falls like at some point they'll exit that and then there'll be a GA option. But you can think of this architecture a little bit in the future state, because I know some customers of mine have a strict policy that if something's in preview, they don't use it in prod, just flat out. And that's certainly reasonable. And I have others that have no qualms about that. So wherever you fall on that, I do kind of want to call that out. That everything we're talking about here is technically in preview. So while it's been a part of the product for a while, at least as of this show, this day, they are in preview right now. So I don't think we'll go deep into Power BI. We can touch on real-time intelligence if we want, but Chris, I'll hand it over to you to kind of talk about the Data Factory and analytics workloads here.
Yep. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually take a step, 30,000 feet up, because we see this this picture and we've got all these different experiences on there. But let's think about if we were doing this maybe in another cloud platform. We might be moving our data with Apache Airflow and doing transforms in Databricks and landing that data in Snowflake and using Tableau or Qlik to do our visualizations on it. But then we've got 4 different subscriptions. We've got to bolt all those different products together. And honestly, until recently, it was pretty much the same in the Azure cloud as well. The idea here is that Fabric is a software as a service. So you buy Fabric, you have everything all included. Whether you use it or not is up to you, but it's there. It's bolted together already. So you don't have to buy all these separate products and figure out how to integrate them. That's done for you, right? So that's the big selling point.
Yeah.
So, we have our Data Factory, and that's our equivalent of Azure Data Factory. So we've got pipelines that move data back and forth and do orchestrations. We've got data flow Gen 2 that you can do some transformations. And then, we've got this very broad box called analytics. Yeah. Well, we've got lake houses, we've got warehouses, and those are really just 2 different types of data store. But whichever data store we choose, the data is really actually physically stored in the one lake in the Fabric platform below. So all these different experiences, that's the compute that's happening when you use your data. But it's all decoupled because everything's based on open source, based on Apache Spark. The data layer is based on Parquet with a Delta layer on top. It's all open source. So where you think about the boxed product, right? You have your SQL Server engine, you have your SQL Server MDF file. And each of those things is useless without the other one, right?
Very much so.
But here we've got our Delta Parquet files, we've got our data, and we can read that with our lakehouse, our SQL endpoint to the lakehouse. We can pump data into it, by having our databases in Fabric mirrored into it. We can put data in there from real-time intelligence or from pipelines, data flows from other sources, and then view it with Power BI. So everything's in one place, but we didn't have to move our data around from each of those individual places. It all sits there at the one lake at the heart of the Fabric platform.
Yeah. Well said. A couple other notes here. So if you've heard of real-time intelligence and you've looked at the marketing around that, it's very heavy on like streaming examples, IoT data, sensor data. So you may have looked at that and said, well, I don't own an airport. I don't have an assembly line. I don't need that. What real-time intelligence is really driving at is giving you the ability to have an event-driven architecture around your data. So it's got things like Activator in it, where you can take automated actions on a set of conditions that happen. It does anomaly detection as well. So if you kind of step back and think, okay, well, I don't have any streaming data. Like when I do talks on it, I always ask how many people have streaming data. A couple hands go up. So, well, how many of you have transactions? Well, everybody's hand goes up because we're data people. We have a transactional system somewhere. In the concept, or in the concept of RTI, transactions are events. So if you want to take some actions based on events that are happening, real-time intelligence is a lot more capable, I think, than the marketing people have led on. Those use cases are super cool. When you're talking about processing billions of records instantly and doing automated things, I understand why the big fancy videos are like that. But it really is more relevant to all of us than I think marketing would have you know. So I always like to mention that, even though we're not here to talk about RTI. I really like it. A couple notes on the other icons below. We talked about OneLake. Governance, that's going to be Purview. So if you're sitting there saying like, I don't, what tool is that? Purview is the governance solution that kind of fits in with Fabric. The Copilot logo, obviously we're familiar with that. You're going to see Copilots all over Fabric. I won't say it again because I think if I say it again, we all have to drink. That's not officially endorsed, but the Copilot drinking game is certainly dangerous. Please don't play it. Anything else we need to cover here, Chris?
No, I think that's a good place to end this slide on.
All right. Okay. So no session would be complete without talking about AI. So we're going to do that here because we have to talk about it in every presentation, every meeting, everything. So one thing you may wonder is if you've seen some of the marketing, both around SQL Server 2025, but also SQL database and Fabric, it talks about, being the database for your AI and all of that. And if you're not familiar with some of the changes that have come to SQL in the last several months, you're thinking like, oh, that's just a marketing tagline because we have to say everything is AI this. It really isn't. There's some, of course, it's marketing as well, but there are some additional supports kind of built in here that really are enabling some AI-driven things, but using the SQL engine. So before we get to that, we'll kind of start on the left side of this slide here. Important to note, because I do get this question when we talk about SQL in Fabric, is it how do I connect to it? Like, do I have to go to the web? Do I have to interact with it through a browser? You can, but like it says there, it's integrated with kind of all the SQL tools. So any sort of development or administrative work you're doing, all those tools will hook right into this. Speaking of administrative work, there's a lot less to do here because like Chris said on that last slide, Fabric is a software as a service product. So if you're a fan of knobs and buttons and dials and turning those and tuning those and all that, we can't do much of that here. It is wavy hand cloud magic. And so there's not, if you're like, oh, I can't wait to get my hands on this and kind of see what makes it go. A lot of that's abstracted from us because it's SaaS. Governed, we talk about that on the last slide. Secured in much the same way SQL always has been. The high availability is, like it says, automatically there. It's zone redundant. But one thing I do want to call out, since cloud outages love to make the news, is that zone redundant, if an entire region has an issue, that's not going to help you. So that's something to think about if you're thinking of a true highly available architecture. You're going to have to take some additional steps here. That's a solvable issue. And for the vast majority of use cases and outages and all that, this is great. And it is. You don't have to stand up a cluster. You don't have to do anything. It's just there. But if an entire region becomes inaccessible because authentication's down or something like that, a couple extra design steps come into play here outside of the scope of this, but happy to talk about those offline if that's a problem that you think you might have. It does auto scale as well. Again, kind of part of the part of the magic of SaaS is that it will, up to the capacity you own, it will scale up, and you don't have to manage that. We've already covered the mirroring to one lake as well. I won't say the word I said I wouldn't say again, but in terms of Azure AI integration, there are some things to do. I actually gave a session on this last night. The built-in vector support that's now in SQL database, that's in the SQL 2025 preview as well, and has been in Azure SQL for a while as well. The supporting of vector types, the ability to create a vector index, that's all in there. So when you see like, okay, it's the database for AI, what does that mean? It means this. We can implement RAG patterns now in SQL Server, in SQL and Fabric, in Azure SQL. And that allows us to play nice with our app dev friends who are saying, well, I need semantic search in my app. I need you to make that go. We can make that go now with the support we have across the SQLs. Anything else you want to touch on there, Chris, before we move on?
Well, I'm not the most up to date on AI. Do you want to explain what a RAG pattern is for those like me that may not be fully versed?
Sure. So in layman's terms, basically, so it's retrieval augmented generation. Easy for me to say. What you're doing is you're taking an LLM that's trained, that knows things. It kind of knows what it's been trained on. But if you're wanting to enrich that with data that you have, like a transactional system, inventory system, and customers want to come in and say, how many of this kind of, t-shirt do you have left? The LLM's not going to know that. But if you implement RAG patterns alongside to supplement the LLM's knowledge with basically updating information from your transactional system, it gives it more of an ability to give an accurate answer there. So it's basically taking what the LLM knows and then supplementing it with your transactional data in this case. So that's a very high level what it is. But I think probably for the context of this session, we should leave it there, because I could probably talk about that for an hour, but I don't think we're supposed to.
Excellent. Well, that means I could just sit here and drink some more water. That'd be okay with me.
We probably shouldn't do that. So,
yeah.
All right.
I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention on that was just to sort of reiterate the theme that this is just another option, right? This is, we now have many options of places to put a SQL database. If you want to have a SQL database for your, huge volume, real-time, globally situated, sales platform, maybe the SQL database in Fabric isn't quite right.
Right.
But if you want to stand up a quick app and you're happy with the zone redundancy, you don't need full geo redundancy, maybe SQL database in Fabric, is an option for you. So it's another option, right? It's making some things really easy. Maybe you're a developer that doesn't have the backing of a full DBA team. Right. SQL database in Fabric might be a great solution for you. So, if nothing else is going away. Azure SQL DB isn't going away. The boxed SQL product isn't going away. SQL 2025 will be here, before we know it.
Who knows
when? This is just another option.
Yes, yeah. Well said. It's very much horse for course, because a lot of times somebody will say like, well, just tell me what's the best thing in Fabric to use. Like, what's the best data store? Where should everything live? And unfortunately, Fabric really lends itself to the classic consulting answer of, well, it depends. And it really does, depending on what's your end game. And then, there's a way in Fabric to get there, but I think there will never be an answer to the, well, what's the best data store for me to use here? Because there are a lot of options and a lot of different things for a lot of different roles. So if you haven't mentioned your role in in the chat, feel free to do that. Chris and I are going to go on and talk about the developer experience a little bit. So this builds on the last slide. We've talked about it. Like if you're a data dev or app dev or whatever, and you don't have the support of a full DBA team, or maybe you don't have any DBAs at all. I hope that's not the case, but in some shops it is. SQL database and Fabric does allow you to stand it up quite easily. There is the AI assistance through the word that I shall not name. You do get an integrated T-SQL editor on the web as well. So if your machine is really locked down and your IT people are mean and they're not going to let you go grab Management Studio or VS Code even, you can work with this all through a browser. And there is a built-in performance dashboard. Now, if you're sitting out there as a DBA and you're saying like, oh, cool, like there's rich monitoring, this is awesome. It is not. This performance dashboard does give you a look at what's happening and the ability to kind of see the impact that your queries are having on whatever the overall workload is. It is not going to replace any monitoring tool that you have. And it's not going to be that rich set of data that like a good DBA wants. So there's some stuff there. It kind of tells you what's going on, but digging deeply into detail there, it's not really built for that. So I do want to call that out because we probably have a lot of DBAs in here. They're kind of curious about all this stuff and how it works and what it is. And that's certainly an area where it's not replacing any of the tools that you have. Should we argue about that, Chris, or are we in line there?
No. But just, let's remind everyone, hey, this feature is in preview. So I would expect that, the performance dashboarding experience will get richer over time. I'm very optimistic that way.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing about Fabric. It never stands still. So if you go out and look at something and you're like, man, I wish it did that, stay tuned because it probably will.
Yeah, if you're watching this presentation back on YouTube in December 2025 or later, probably everything Matt and I have said is completely bogus.
Who knows? Certainly, well, maybe one of the names will have changed. A logo might have changed. Like one of my friends says, he who works for Microsoft, but I shall not name him. He said when Microsoft loves a product a lot, they change the name at least every 6 months. Yeah. So we'll see. I think Fabric is going to be around long term as the name, but we'll see about everything inside of it. So this is a little more of kind of, I don't want to say a deeper dive, a different dive into how things are working under the hood. So if you're curious about that, I don't think we're going to go real deep here because this is very much an introductory session, but your data log and backup files are present on zone redundant storage. That's what ZRS means there, which kind of alludes back to that last slide as well. It is a serverless database. I hate that term so much because there are servers making this go, but serverless basically means like you don't have a fixed provision amount of stuff at all times. It allows it to do that auto scaling. There's a ceiling and there's a floor, and it's kind of handling all that for you. So, within a few seconds to a minute of when you need it, you're going to have all the horsepower it can give you if the workload has scaled up to that. And of course, all this is mirroring back into one lake. So if you want to consume it in an event house in RTI, in a warehouse, in a lake house, Power BI, whatever, you can do all of that. So, and that just kind of automatically happens. Unlike if you had an Azure SQL database set up outside of Fabric, you'd have to set that mirroring up to work for you. This is auto magic, and it's there. I do, before we move on from this slide, and Chris and I mentioned this a couple other times. So you see the tagline at the bottom. It's pretty marketing heavy, right? The power of Fabric with no compromises on your SQL operational database. Let's talk about that for a second. In terms of performance out of the box, that's true. But like Chris said, if you're thinking of running this kind of massive global sales platform or something like that, remember that SQL databases and Fabric are in whatever capacity you have, and it does have a limit to what it can scale to. Now, if your checkbook has no limits, you can go to an F2048 and rock and roll all day long. Most of our checkbooks have limits on them. So when it says no compromises there, do bear in mind, and of course the marketing people aren't going to mention this, and that's okay, that your SQL databases in Fabric are competing with all of your other Fabric workloads as well. There are a lot of safeguards in place to kind of let all those play together nicely, but you do have, a limit to the amount of horsepower that can be donated to all of those workloads. So that I didn't want to leave this slide without calling that out. Anything to add there, Chris?
No, just the one thing that I think is a little bit subtle on this slide is you see the line between SQL and OneLake. And note that has arrows going both ways. So we're actually going to talk about that more on a future slide. I just like to point it out. They're very subtle on this piece, but very important.
Good call. Okay. Off we go. All right. So we won't spend too much time here. This is really kind of a dive into the image on that last slide. Goes, as deep as it's going to go into architecture stuff. This stuff is available on the Learn pages as well. So it is handling failovers behind the scenes. We've talked about the built-in HA, that auto failover. Also, you don't have to redirect your connections to the new node. It's going to do all that for you. Because the storage is remote, like it says, that it's redundant across data centers. That's more or less what zone redundant means. So very cool stuff here, and a very modern architecture underneath this as well. Okay, so now we've got a demo, and this was recorded by Bob Ward, and Chris and I know better than to talk over Bob because Bob's awesome. So we're going to go ahead and watch this, and then we'll move on with the rest of the slides.
SQL database in Fabric is simple, autonomous, and optimized for AI. Getting started with the database is simply as easy as putting in a name. With my database in place, I can run familiar T-SQL scripts to create tables. With tables and data in place, I can use a familiar Object Explorer interface to browse and look at my table. With my tables and data in place, I can now query my data and get assistance from a copilot. I can put in a natural language statement like this to help me easily build a query to join across my tables. With the query generated, I can insert here to build quickly a query editor window to run my query. If I make mistakes in queries, I also have a new option to fix query errors automatically by Copilot. I even have a documentation available to explain query, documenting pieces of how it works. SQL Database in Fabric has other features for developers built right into the Fabric interface. For example, you can develop new APIs for GraphQL. In addition to your workspace, you have source control with Git built in, so that if you make changes to your database, you can go through an entire CI/CD DevOps pipeline. Now, another thing I love about Fabric is querying the mirror of this database. You see this query that I actually have right here? I can take this exact same query, and I can go here to the SQL Analytics endpoint of my database, which is a mirror of my database. You can see right here, I have the same tables that I have in my operational database, but it's part of the mirror. Click here, run a new SQL query, paste in the query that I did before, run it, and I get the exact same results. But this is a read version of my database, not affecting my operational database.
Okay, cool stuff. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So yeah, if you wondered kind of how that web editor experience works, there you go. Obviously, Bob's walking us through the very basic stuff there. But so that's kind of the tour of Fabric architecture, a little bit about the architecture of SQL and Fabric itself, how all this stuff can talk. So let's talk about bringing those SQL skills that probably a lot of us have forward into this. So the T-SQL surface area, again, is pretty similar. Obviously, some of the T-SQL that's not supported is stuff that makes sense. Like you're not going to be able to create an availability group here and do some of those sorts of things because it's software as a service presentation. there's stuff you just can't do because it won't let you do it because it's doing it for you. So that makes sense. But things like select, join, CTEs, window functions, all that, that all works here. Security and role management, if you're comfortable with SQL Server, Azure SQL, whatever, no big changes here either. That second bullet there, really important. Query optimization concepts still apply. They still matter. Like we said, your SQL database in Fabric is competing with everything else that the capacity supporting from a workload perspective. So writing optimized queries is good. If you're just starting out, having a conversation with Copilot, I know I wouldn't say it again, but I couldn't think of a way around it, can be helpful. So it will give you, to be honest, in my experience, it's not going to give you super advanced performance tips, but it is going to give you a lot of the basics and kind of mid-level knowledge. So if you're brand new to this stuff and just kind of learning SQL, it can help you get over some of the humps and adhere to kind of current best practices. But it still definitely does not replace a really knowledgeable DBA that knows this engine. So what's new? So we talked about kind of what's the same. We're going to talk about a few things here. So you can run T-SQL in notebooks. If you're not familiar with notebooks, kind of the quick description that I have is they have cells both for code and for text. And that text can include video links, GIFs, instructions, things like that. So you can have, they're really great for run books, but you can have a cell that basically gives the instructions or a description of what happens in the next cell. Then the next cell has code that can be run. We can do T-SQL notebooks in Fabric as well. As Bob kind of mentioned during that last bit, you can access this data across all kinds of things because one lake is the single source of truth. Ultimately, it all lives there, but you can talk to some of these other workloads via their endpoints as well. Semantic layer integration for Power BI and AI. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to be able to escape AI in any conversation about this stuff. There are tighter integrations between all the different layers. I mentioned Fabric data agents up top. That's one of the things that's kind of talking about here. Really what that's doing is bringing your data exploration together and kind of having that experience meet you wherever you are in Fabric. Anything I glossed over there, Chris?
I don't think so. We've got a good slide coming up to talk about some of that in more detail anyway.
We do. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
AI again, of course.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I know everything is AI, but it's also, BI.
Yep.
Right. Because one pattern that is the classic pattern is you've got data flowing from your business system into your BI or your analytics system, and you create a report and it stops there.
Yeah.
One of the great things about having, a SQL database right in Fabric is that you can then just pipe the results from your BI system right back into a transactional database. So, the BI, or if you're running it through some machine learning models to generate a model, that's not the end point. You can integrate all of that stuff right into your transactional database. So that's why I thought it was such a big point a few slides ago, why that arrow goes both ways.
Yep.
And
yeah, this is one of the slides when we ran through this deck to get this prepped. Whether it's the intentional takeaway from this slide or not, that's kind of where both our heads landed. Is it's like reports are really good at telling you what happened. Maybe it just happened, or it happened yesterday, or it happened last week. But the integration of all this stuff, Fabric makes it a lot easier for us to not only tell what's happening now, but then take actions on it too. That's, I think, really one of the interesting use cases about all this. And databases certainly have a role to play there because, like we said, they're for a complete data platform. Not having a place to put truly operational data was a gap, but that gap's been filled.
Right. And because it's all in the same place, you can take your OLAP databases with your star schema and join the tables to the tables in your transactional
Yep.
Database. You can use, the data that's in your Silver Lakehouse and do some debugging just by joining, the SQL endpoint to the database and joining those tables from those different data stores together. So having everything in one place is sort of the killer app idea.
It
right?
gives
If
us
you've
some
got an ID,
opportunities. We can do some things we couldn't do before, which is always cool. Sometimes dangerous, always cool though.
yes.
Okay, we're not going to touch on this too much. To be honest, Chris, I think it's fair to say this was probably not our favorite slide.
That would be the truth.
Yes. So obviously, dev tools over there, we've kind of talked about the support for all those. One thing we do want to highlight here is that Fabric CLI is the command line interface for Fabric. So if you've got people on your team, whether they be operations folks, devs, whatever, and they love a good command prompt and some scripting and all that, Fabric CLI, send them that way and let them go nuts. That's exactly what it's for. We'll kind of gloss over the app layer a bit here. It's more for our developer friends. Chris and I did have some quibbles with the business logic part of this slide. I would dispute that data agents are part of the business logic. For me, they're complementary to the data layer. They are kind of that next layer up, but it's not really business logic for me. Data layer wise, we've kind of covered the ability lightly. We've talked about the ability to do ML models in the data science part of Fabric. We've talked about RTI, OneLake databases, all that. We haven't talked about Azure AI Foundry. Really light touch on that is it's kind of a one-stop shop marketplace-like experience for all things AI and agents and all of that. It's the way you interact with your deployed AI resources. You can go find agents that other people are doing. You can manage the agents you're developing yourself. Kind of anything and everything Azure AI can be found there. Chris, anything that we want to not gloss over that I just did?
No, I just think we're just reinforcing the big theme, which is that the SQL database or Cosmos DB in Fabric is just another tool in this big SaaS toolbox.
Exactly.
It's all joined together for us to play in.
Yeah, and that can all support whatever way our app friends want to deploy their apps on that top line. All of this can be used to support that as well. Ooh, fancy transition. Okay, so this one's kind of interesting. So this really is trying to bring everything together that we've talked about. We obviously don't have time to get into all of this, but if you follow along with the text next to the numbers. So we mentioned earlier where, like, let's say you had an inventory system. We were talking about it in terms of a RAG pattern, which isn't exactly what's happening here. But we are, taking an update, say, hey, we're out of something. That triggers an activator alert. So we've got an activator sitting in RTI that says, okay, I've got an inventory of 0 here. And it talks about regenerating any recommendations to customers. So there's no more details there, but most likely what that is probably it probably kicks off a workflow that's looking at inventory levels of similar items, and it's using that semantic search to do that. So we touch lightly on vector support, things like that. It's probably leveraging that support to do that. And it's saying, hey, we're out of this DeWalt saw, but customers, want other saws. So while we're out of this, don't recommend stuff we don't have, recommend stuff we do have. And that's going to generate that list. So it's going to bring all that together to do that. And then if you note at the end of the text, point 3 on the far right of the slide there, basically the prompt that it's been given is for the dynamic offers agent. So that's that Azure AI Foundry logo. So there's been an agent written and deployed. And it's going to suggest the alternatives that the activator workflow generated. And if there's the ability to offer a discount, it's going to do that as well. And that's how it brings Cosmos into the party here. It's going to add that offer to the database within Cosmos. And then what that results in is point 4, where basically somebody comes in, talks to this agent via an app on their phone or something like that. The DeWalt saw they wanted is not there, but it says, hey, there's a Milwaukee saw, it's just as good, and it's available for the same price. All of that happened within Fabric, with the exception of the autonomous agent. And like we said, that's what Azure AI Foundry is for. Fabric did everything else. And you can see there's some UDFs in there as well. I did mention the vector search. So again, if you follow the arrows, there are a lot of them here. The arrow on vector search, kind of dead center on the slide, is leveraging that vector support that's in SQL database in Fabric. Chris, anything I missed there before we kind of get to the last few slides here?
No, other than just beating the dead theme, look how much of that is encased within the green lines, right? It's all, and actually, I think the API for GraphQL piece should be inside those green lines as well.
I could argue that, yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that's the selling point here.
It is.
Yeah, a one-stop shop, if you will.
Very much so. All right. So how do we get started with these? Microsoft Learn, as always, great way to do that. It's got everything it says there, Learn modules, decision guides. So again, if you're here and you're not working with a partner to make that call and you're trying to figure out, okay, here's my use case, what do I do? It's going to walk you through, SQL database and Fabric is good for ABC and not so good for XYZ. I will say, even though that doesn't say here, my user group in Lexington, Kentucky is part of the Azure Data Tech Group's community. And if you Google or Bing that, you can see if there's a local user group by you. I know we've hosted talks on this year as well. And those local user groups are a wonderful way to connect with people in person and learn about this stuff. And if you have things you want to share, it's a great place for you to do that and start your speaking journey as well, which is kind of what brought Chris and I here. So I'm always a fan of that and always want to put in a plug for that as well. You can explore Fabric. The trials are fairly easy to get. The trials are very capable as well. You're getting the equivalent of an F64, basically. You won't get to play with data agents because that requires a paid capacity, but I think pretty much everything else you can kick the tires on. If you don't have any access, you're not able to spin up a trial or don't want to, like we mentioned, those Fabric in a day course, whether it's Analyst, RTI, any of those, they're offered both virtually or in person, usually by partners like where I work. Those can be great as well. That link on the lower right will get you to all that and see what is in your local area and all that stuff. The hardest thing about getting moving is getting started. So I like the advice on this slide. Start small. One thing the Fabric product group's done a really good job with. So if you tried to mess with Fabric like a year and a half ago, you're like, man, there's just no samples. Like I can't make RTI do anything. I can't make a lot of this stuff do anything. I don't have any sample data. They've done a really good job coming up with some rich samples for you to explore all this stuff. So if you haven't looked in a while, take a look now because it's pretty cool. And hopefully from that sample or something we've said here, you can think of a real problem at your work and you're like, hey, there's some stuff in Fabric that I can use to solve this.
Yeah, and if you don't like the sample data, maybe you like building with Lego bricks. There's some really good free Lego data sets out there.
Good call.
Maybe you don't want to use your company's data. You can go to Kaggle, Kaggle, and they run a lot of kind of AI competitions or machine learning competitions to get the best results. They have a lot of really good real world data sets.
Yep.
And yeah, this kind of leads in here because people are always asking, well, like now I know this stuff, right? I've taken my certifications. How do I prove that? Right. So one thing we'd always encourage is to like start building a portfolio, like put your code, that you can share that doesn't have like your company secrets on. But
Don't
put
do
it out
that.
on,
Don't share those. Yeah.
put it, share those directly with Matt and I. But put your code out on GitHub. Show everybody how like good your visualizations. Wait, if you have a good visualization, I hear there's like a data visualization contest going on.
There is.
So that's another great way to like get your name out there. Prove to your current boss or maybe your next boss, all the stuff that you do know.
Yeah. Yep. One takeaway from this slide, and we've mentioned a couple other times, data modeling and performance tuning still matter, and that's absolutely true. Marketing will have you believing very much in wavy hand, cloud magic, unlimited scale, unlimited power. There are real physical limits to this stuff, and if you're running on an F2 or something like that, there are real limits to what you can do. So efficient use of this stuff still matters, arguably more than it did, because it's now you can go to your boss and say, oh boy, we've got an F32, but I can't support everything I'm trying to do. I need an F64. Well, if they press you for, have you optimized any of your models? Have you optimized queries that are running, things like that? And you haven't, they can put a real financial value on maybe the optimizations that you and your team haven't done. So those skills matter. Things still need to be efficient and fast. And like Chris said, when you come up with some cool things in that area, take the company secret sauce out, but put it on GitHub, put it on a blog, do a session on it, share that, because that's going to help you.
Yeah, and we're moving sort of back to a world where you shouldn't just have operational data skills or just have analytical data skills, because again, everything's in the one place. You're going to want skills on both sides. And this is just, it's nothing is new under the sun. Time is a flat circle, et cetera, et cetera. But, 20 years ago, the person doing your reports was probably the same person tuning your database. Those were all one set of SQL skills. And then they started diverging and specializing. And now we see them coming back together to have all of our data estate in, the same data fabric. And that's just leading to these blended responsibilities. Matt and I don't necessarily agree with all, quite how this is put in verbatim, but just
bullets 2 and 4 we're not fans of.
No. The key though is just if you only have operational skills, start developing some additional skills on the analytics side. If you're a DBA, make sure you're used to knowing how all the knobs and buttons affect things, on your Azure SQL DB or your on-prem SQL server. Start learning about the things that affect performance, in the analytics space. If you're, a data architect and you've been, focusing a lot on how all these different, ancillary products fit together, start learning more about how the different components of Fabric, work ideally seamlessly together.
Right. Exactly right. So we've already kind of covered this. Share your knowledge. Chris and I are here because we decided to do that years and years ago. Sharing my knowledge, such as it is, it has been life-changing for me. I think for a lot of us, not only professionally, but personally as well. So as you get interested in this stuff, as you start building stuff, share it out, blog about it, speak about it, do the contest, do the challenges. It's a great way to get your name out there. I think we're all aware of how challenging this year has been for people that do what all of us do. A way to mitigate that, and I speak from experience here, is to take whatever it is you think you know and share that with folks, and that'll come back and do very good stuff for you. If you want to learn more about Fabric databases, we've got the link there. Obviously, we've talked about the Fabric tutorials as well. The Data Exposed series, if you're not familiar with that, Anna Hoffman hosts that. They're good little video snippets, typically like 5 to 7 minutes long. A great way to keep up with what's new in the database space. There's obviously some AI stuff mixed in there too. So if you want to go a little deeper on any of the things we talked about, there's probably a data exposed for that. So what comes up next? We already covered this, but and now 6 hours from now. So you want to be a data engineer ends the Fabric Data Days for this week. There are events continuing though, and you can go to the 2aka.ms links below to learn what those are. We covered the cert codes up top. So if you joined us late and want to know how to do that, here's all the links to get your discounts, links to find study groups, links to sign up for the certification exam. If you want to learn more about this stuff, preferably in person, but virtually as well, these links will take you to Fabric Analyst in a day and RTI in a day. Who knows, you may see me doing one of these next year. Whether that's a selling point or not, I'm not sure. And Chris, anything more we want to say about SQLCon or FabCon before we wrap up, other than it will be fun?
Yeah, no, I just these large tech conventions where you can meet people doing, broadly the same kind of work that you're doing across the whole nation and internationally as well. They've entirely changed my career.
Yeah. Yep.
So
fair to say.
I cannot. Yeah, I just can't recommend them enough.
Yeah, they are great.
And I think that's about all we've got.
That's pretty much it.
I'm sorry, we've gone a little longer than expected. As you can tell, Matt and I we can chat about data stuff for days. But I know, you've all been well taken care of in the chat. Yeah, thank you, Haney. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Deepthi. Thank you, Pam and Shannon from the Fabric team for showing up and helping out as well. Thank you, Anna, a great producer, for just letting us chat with you all today.
Well said. And I look at it, they got 6 minutes of bonus content. But yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out, whether it was lunchtime, dinner time, wherever you are in the world. We enjoyed it, and we hope you did too.
All right. Copilot, Copilot, Copilot.
Dang it.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.